Hey friend, welcome to Sleepy History World. Before we begin tonight's journey, I have one small favor to ask. If this channel has become a place you enjoy returning to, a place where you can slow down, relax, and drift into fascinating stories from the past, please take a moment to subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to keep creating these calm, carefully crafted history videos for you. Now, get comfortable, settle in, and let's travel back in time together. Tonight, we're checking into a place that millions of travelers once believed was the gold standard of comfort on the open road. At first glance, a 1970s Holiday Inn might seem familiar. There were comfortable beds, smiling staff, and a glowing sign welcoming tired families after a long day of driving. But look a little closer, and you'll discover a world that feels almost impossible to imagine today. There were no smartphones, no online bookings, no digital room keys, and no endless stream of notifications. Instead, holidays moved at a slower pace. Conversations lasted longer, and every overnight stay became part of the adventure itself. So dim the lights, get cozy, and join me as we step back into the 1970s to discover why spending a night at a Holiday Inn was an experience unlike anything you'll find in today's hotels. Imagine pulling off a long American highway sometime during the 1970s after hours of driving beneath an endless sky. The family car coated with road dust, the children restless in the back seat, and the glowing green Holiday Inn sign appearing ahead like a beacon promising comfort, clean sheets, hot food, and perhaps even a swimming pool. Today, booking a hotel usually happens weeks before leaving home with a few taps on a phone, complete with photographs, customer reviews, virtual tours, and digital room keys waiting inside an app. But in the 1970s, checking into a Holiday Inn was a completely different experience, shaped by an era when travel itself felt more adventurous and far less predictable. Many families had no reservations at all. Instead, they simply drove until evening approached and searched for the familiar great sign, a towering illuminated landmark that could be seen from the highway long before the building itself came into view. The sign became one of America's most recognizable roadside symbols, reassuring weary travelers that they would likely find clean rooms, friendly service, and standards that remained remarkably consistent from one state to another. This consistency was revolutionary during an era when independent roadside motels varied wildly in quality. One motel might offer spotless accommodations, while the next could have uncomfortable beds, poor sanitation, and little security. Holiday Inn built its reputation by convincing travelers that they knew exactly what awaited them, no matter where they stopped. That promise alone transformed family road trips across America. Long before online maps existed, motorists often planned vacations around locations of Holiday Inns marked in printed travel guides or remembered from previous journeys. Children riding in station wagons learned to watch for the famous sign because spotting one often meant the day's drive was finally over. The excitement was genuine because checking into a Holiday Inn felt like arriving at a destination rather than simply finding a place to sleep. Walking into the lobby immediately revealed another difference from modern hotels. There were no guests staring silently at smartphones while waiting in line. Instead, people chatted with receptionists, exchanged travel stories with strangers, and often lingered in comfortable seating areas, reading newspapers or brochures about nearby attractions. The front desk clerk handled everything manually, searching through reservation books, assigning room numbers by hand, and preparing paper registration cards that guests signed with pens attached by small chains. Payment involved cash, travelers' checks, or increasingly, credit cards that were processed using mechanical imprint machines. The clerk placed the card into a metal device, slid the handle firmly across the top, and produced a carbon copy receipt with a satisfying clacking sound. There was no instant electronic authorization, no email confirmation, and certainly no digital invoice arriving seconds later. Guests received an actual metal key attached to a large plastic tag, often intentionally oversized so people would be less likely to lose it or accidentally carry it home. Losing that key could create real inconvenience because replacing locks was more complicated than simply reprogramming an electronic card. As families made their way toward the room, they usually parked directly outside the door. Another defining feature of many Holiday Inns during the decade, rather than navigating elevators and endless indoor hallways, guests often stepped out of the car and walked only a few feet before unlocking their room. This design perfectly suited road travelers carrying heavy suitcases, picnic baskets, coolers, and children's toys. The automobile remained central to the entire experience because America itself revolved around highway travel. Inside the room, everything reflected the tastes and technology of the 1970s. Furniture tended to be sturdy rather than minimalist, with dark wood finishes, patterned fabrics, and brightly colored carpets featuring geometric designs popular at the time. Floral bedspreads, textured wallpaper, heavy curtains, and large lamps created an atmosphere that modern travelers might find nostalgic, but which then represented contemporary style. Air conditioning units hummed loudly beneath the windows, producing a constant background noise that many travelers associated with comfort after driving through summer heat. Instead of whisper, quiet climate systems hidden behind walls, these machines proudly announced their presence with every cycle. Entertainment also looked remarkably different. The television was usually a substantial piece of furniture rather than a flat screen hanging on the wall. Depending on the location, guests might receive only a handful of channels, each controlled by physical knobs or large buttons instead of sleek remote controls. Children argued over what little programming was available because there were no streaming services, no video games connected to the television, and certainly no internet. If nothing interesting happened to be on television that evening, families often played card games, read books, talked together, or simply went to bed early in preparation for another day of driving. Telephones sat on bedside tables with long coiled cords, serving only one purpose: making calls. Every long-distance conversation cost money. So many travelers kept calls brief. Speaking with relatives back home often meant carefully watching the clock because every additional minute added to the expense. There was no video chatting with grandparents, no instant messaging friends, and no posting photographs online to announce where you had spent the night. Most people simply disappeared from regular communication until they returned home, perhaps sending a postcard along the way if they happened to remember. Bathrooms also reflected another era. While modern hotels proudly advertise luxury toiletries, rainfall showers, and elaborate bathroom designs, a typical Holiday Inn bathroom emphasized practicality above all else. Small wrapped bars of soap, simple shampoo bottles, if provided at all, thick towels, and reliable hot water represented genuine comforts. Hair dryers were not always standard features, and many travellers packed their own. Even something as ordinary as ice required leaving the room and walking to a communal ice machine carrying a plastic bucket supplied by the hotel. That familiar metallic clatter of fresh ice dropping into the bucket became part of the evening ritual for countless families. One of the biggest attractions, especially for children, was the swimming pool. Holiday Inn understood that families wanted more than just a bed. So many locations proudly featured outdoor pools surrounded by lounge chairs. During summer evenings, laughter echoed across courtyards as children splashed while parents relaxed nearby after long hours behind the wheel. These pools often became informal gathering places where strangers struck up conversations about road conditions, vacation destinations, and recommendations for attractions further along the highway. Friendships, even brief ones lasting only an evening, formed more naturally because people spent less time isolated by personal electronics. Dining was another experience almost unrecognizable today. Many Holiday Inns contained full-service restaurants rather than quick grab and go breakfast counters. Families dressed a little more neatly before heading downstairs for dinner, where waitresses served meals at tables covered with cloth napkins and sturdy dinnerware. Breakfast frequently involved eggs cooked to order, pancakes, bacon, toast, and endless cups of coffee rather than individually wrapped pastries and disposable utensils. The restaurant often became a social centre not just for travellers, but also for local residents, giving the hotel a stronger connection with the surrounding community. Business travellers gathered there as well, discussing sales appointments or regional meetings over hearty breakfasts long before laptops occupied every table. The pace of travel itself felt slower. Without GPS navigation, drivers relied on folded paper maps spread across car hoods or passenger seats. Wrong turns happened frequently, and discovering unexpected attractions along the way became part of the adventure rather than a frustrating delay. Hotel staff often recommended scenic routes, local restaurants, or hidden attractions because they possessed valuable local knowledge that could not simply be searched online. Their suggestions sometimes shaped entire vacations. Children experienced these trips differently too. Instead of staring at tablets during every mile, they counted license plates from different states, watched passing scenery, played word games, or read comic books. Arriving at a Holiday Inn after a full day on the road therefore felt especially rewarding because everyone had genuinely experienced the journey rather than merely passing time with digital entertainment. Even business travel carried a different rhythm. Executives often carried briefcases stuffed with paper documents rather than lightweight laptops. Typing reports required typewriters or handwritten notes. Secretaries back at the office handled much of the communication, and urgent messages sometimes arrived through the hotel switchboard rather than directly to personal devices. Missing a phone call could simply mean waiting until the next scheduled conversation because constant availability was not expected. Privacy also felt different. Hotel rooms represented temporary escapes from the outside world, because very few people could reach guests unless they knew exactly where they were staying. Families focused more completely on one another because distractions remained limited. Evening conversations lasted longer. Perhaps the greatest surprise for a modern traveller stepping into a Holiday Inn during the 1970s would not be the decor or even the technology, but the complete absence of speed. Almost nothing happened instantly. Arriving guests waited patiently while the receptionist answered telephone calls, completed paperwork, searched reservation cards, and occasionally stepped into a back office to verify room availability. Nobody sighed dramatically because check-in took 10 minutes instead of 2. People simply accepted that travelling required patience. If several families arrived after a busy holiday weekend, conversations naturally began in the queue. Parents compared routes. Children proudly announced how many states they had visited, and salesmen exchanged stories about long hours behind the wheel. Waiting itself became part of the travel experience rather than something to avoid at all costs. Holiday Inn also occupied a fascinating place in American culture because staying there represented success without extravagance. For many middle-class families, it was affordable enough to fit within the holiday budget, while still feeling noticeably more comfortable than older roadside motels. Parents often viewed it as a reward for working hard throughout the year. Saving money for a summer road trip frequently included setting aside enough for several nights at Holiday Inns, where children could enjoy a swimming pool, and parents could feel confident that the rooms would be clean. It was neither luxurious nor cheap. Instead, it became the dependable middle ground that millions of families trusted. The car park itself revealed much about the decade. Instead of rows of nearly identical sport utility vehicles, visitors would have seen enormous station wagons with imitation wood paneling, brightly coloured sedans in shades of avocado green, burnt orange, mustard yellow, deep blue, and burgundy, along with pickup trucks pulling camping trailers or boats. Some cars carried rooftop luggage boxes, while others hauled bicycles attached to the rear bumper. Many vehicles displayed bumper stickers celebrating national parks, patriotic slogans, or favourite sports teams. Opening a car door often released the scent of warm vinyl seats baked by the afternoon sun. Children climbed out stretching sore legs after sitting for hours, without today's entertainment systems to occupy them. Luggage looked different too. Hard-shell suitcases made from moulded plastic or heavy leather remained common. Many decorated with airline or travel stickers collected over the years. Wheels on luggage were still far from universal, so travellers carried surprisingly heavy cases by hand. Bellhops remained a familiar sight at larger Holiday Inns, greeting guests with luggage carts and cheerful smiles. Tipping was expected, and many children watched with fascination as the bellhop effortlessly stacked suitcases into impossible looking towers before rolling them towards the room. Stepping inside the hotel restaurant during breakfast produced an atmosphere almost impossible to recreate today. Cigarette smoke drifted gently above many tables because indoor smoking was still socially acceptable. Waitresses knew regular business travellers by name and often remembered how they liked their coffee or eggs. The clinking of ceramic mugs, the hiss of bacon cooking on a large grill, and the constant refilling of coffee cups created a soundtrack that defined mornings for countless travellers. Newspapers lay folded beside plates, their headlines serving as the primary source of news before 24. Or television channels and smartphones delivered constant updates. Guests lingered over breakfast because there was little pressure to rush away. Conversations unfolded naturally, and nobody felt compelled to glance repeatedly at notifications or incoming messages. Business travellers experienced Holiday Inn almost as a temporary office, although one that functioned far differently from today's mobile workplace. Instead of carrying slim laptops, They often unpacked bulky briefcases filled with contracts, handwritten notes, catalogues, and calculators. Some rooms even included small writing desks where travellers prepared reports using portable typewriters. The rhythmic tapping of keys occasionally echoed through corridors in the evening, as sales representatives finished paperwork before the next day's appointments. Correcting mistakes meant using correction fluid or retyping an entire page, making every document require far more care than modern word processors demand. Families often spent evenings exploring the hotel itself because entertainment options remained relatively limited. Many Holiday Inns featured game rooms containing pinball machines, table football, or simple arcade games that fascinated children. A handful of coins could provide half an hour of excitement, while parents relaxed nearby with coffee or conversation. Vending machines stocked fizzy drinks in glass bottles rather than plastic ones, and the satisfying clunk of a bottle dropping into the collection tray became a familiar sound. Children frequently raced one another to fetch ice or soft drinks, turning ordinary hotel errands into tiny adventures. Even the hotel's gift shop reflected a slower age of travel. Shelves displayed postcards, road maps, disposable cameras, travel-size toiletries, paperback novels, souvenirs, colouring books, local guidebooks, and simple toys designed to occupy restless children during the next day's drive. If someone forgot toothpaste or sunscreen, the gift shop probably had it. If parents wanted to send a postcard home, they could purchase one, write a quick message, buy a stamp, and ask the receptionist where the nearest post box was located. Days or even weeks might pass before the postcard finally arrived, often after the family had already returned home. Photography itself required a completely different mindset. Every picture mattered because film was limited. Parents carefully considered each photograph before pressing the shutter. A family standing proudly beside the Holiday Inn sign, children splashing in the swimming pool, or grandparents smiling outside the room might become one of only a few dozen photographs taken during the entire holiday. Nobody reviewed the images immediately. Instead, everyone waited until the film had been developed days or weeks later, turning every holiday photograph into a small surprise. Sometimes heads were accidentally cut off, eyes were closed, or fingers covered the lens. Yet those imperfect photographs often became treasured family memories. Laundry presented another challenge that modern travellers rarely consider. Families on extended road trips frequently visited the hotel's self-service laundry room, carrying baskets of clothes while children wandered nearby with books or snacks. Washing machines rumbled for nearly an hour before clothes moved into large dryers. Waiting became another opportunity for conversations between strangers, many of whom discovered they were travelling similar routes or visiting the same attractions. Such casual interactions happened naturally because everyone accepted that certain tasks simply required time. Weather also shaped the experience more dramatically. Without sophisticated forecasting apps, travellers often relied on television weather reports, radio broadcasts, or advice from hotel staff. Receptionists frequently warned guests about approaching storms, suggested alternate driving routes, or recommended delaying departure until heavy rain passed. Local knowledge mattered enormously. A receptionist who had lived in the area for years could provide guidance no navigation system could match. Children enjoyed freedoms inside Holiday Inns that might surprise parents today. After checking in, Many youngsters happily explored courtyards, searched for vending machines, made friends at the swimming pool, or played catch on grassy areas, while adults watched from a comfortable distance. Hotel grounds became temporary neighborhoods where children from different states invented games together, despite knowing they would probably never meet again. These brief friendships often lasted only a single evening, yet many people remembered them for decades afterwards because they captured the excitement of traveling through unfamiliar places. One charming feature found at many Holiday Inns involved the colourful postcards displayed near the reception desk, showing photographs of the hotel itself. Guests often purchased these cards specifically because they were staying there. Some mailed them to relatives, while others collected them as souvenirs. Over the years, families accumulated boxes filled with postcards from Holiday Inns scattered across the country, creating an informal scrapbook of summer adventures that documented not only where they had travelled, but also how the hotels themselves evolved over time. Maintenance workers quietly kept everything running without the sophisticated technology available today. Air conditioning units required regular servicing, neon signs needed replacement tubes, swimming pools demanded constant cleaning, and room televisions occasionally lost reception that had to be adjusted manually. If something broke, there was rarely a computerized maintenance system generating automatic work orders. Instead, guests reported problems directly to the front desk, where handwritten notes informed maintenance staff what required attention. Perhaps the biggest difference of all lay in the mindset of travellers themselves. A Holiday Inn stay during the 1970s was not expected to provide endless entertainment, luxury spas, high-speed internet, smart televisions, fitness centres, digital concierges, or personalised streaming services. Its purpose was beautifully simple. It offered a comfortable night's sleep, a hot meal, a clean bathroom, and a safe place to park the family car. For many travellers, one of the first things they noticed was the distinctive smell that greeted them upon entering a Holiday Inn. Every decade seems to carry its own unmistakable scent, and the 1970s were no exception. Freshly shampooed carpets mixed with furniture polish, chlorine drifting in from the swimming pool, brewed coffee from the restaurant, cigarette smoke lingering gently in public spaces, and the faint aroma of air freshener combined into a fragrance that millions of guests instantly recognized. It was not designed by marketing teams or luxury fragrance companies. It simply developed naturally from the daily rhythm of the hotel, becoming part of the memory of countless family holidays. Years later, many people could walk into another building with similar carpeting or furniture polish and immediately be reminded of childhood road trips. Lighting throughout the hotel also felt very different from today's bright, minimalist interiors. Holiday Inns often embraced warm yellow lighting rather than the cool white LEDs that dominate modern buildings. Chandeliers, decorative wall sconces, table lamps with fabric shades, and softly glowing ceiling fixtures created an atmosphere that felt cozy rather than clinical. Corridors were intentionally dimmer than today's brightly illuminated hallways, giving evening walks back to the room a calm, almost peaceful feeling. Guests rarely complained about taking photographs because nobody expected perfect lighting for social media. The hotel simply looked the way it looked, and that was enough. Even the sounds of a Holiday Inn formed part of its unique personality. During the day, rolling suitcases were surprisingly rare because most luggage had no wheels. Instead, visitors heard footsteps, laughter from children running across balconies, doors opening with heavy metal keys, the steady hum of ice machines, distant conversations drifting through open courtyard windows, and the splash of swimmers enjoying the pool. Early every morning, housekeeping carts rattled along outdoor walkways, while radios played softly inside maintenance rooms. The soundtrack was entirely mechanical and human. There were no smartphone notification sounds, no constant video calls echoing through lobbies, and no keyboards clicking from dozens of remote workers occupying every available seat. The architecture itself reflected an era obsessed with the automobile. Rather than hiding the car in underground garages, Holiday Inns proudly displayed parking areas directly outside guest rooms. From the window, travelers could often see their own vehicle parked only a few meters away. Parents appreciated being able to keep an eye on the family car loaded with luggage, camping gear, or Christmas presents during holiday travel. If something had been forgotten inside the boot, retrieving it required only a short walk instead of navigating elevators, secure parking levels, or confusing corridors. This simple convenience became one of the chain's greatest strengths during the golden age of the American road trip. Holiday Inns also served as unexpected meeting places for very different kinds of people. A traveling salesman might enjoy breakfast beside a family visiting Disneyland. A retired couple exploring national parks could find themselves chatting with construction workers temporarily living at the hotel while completing a nearby project. Airline crews occasionally stayed overnight, while musicians traveling between performances sometimes checked into the same property. These groups mixed naturally because nearly everyone used the same restaurant, swimming pool, vending machines, and reception area. The hotel became a temporary community whose members constantly changed yet shared the common experience of life on the road. Many children remember the excitement of discovering the complimentary items waiting inside the room. Individually wrapped cups covered with paper lids sat beside tiny packets of instant coffee or tea. Ashtrays rested neatly on bedside tables whether guests smoked or not, simply because smoking was so common that every room included them by default. A notepad bearing the Holiday Inn logo and a matching pen encouraged visitors to leave messages or jot down directions for the next day's drive. These small branded items often disappeared into suitcases as unofficial souvenirs, long before hotels began selling merchandise in gift shops. Television schedules shaped evenings in ways that are difficult to imagine today. If a favorite program began at 8 o'clock, everyone needed to be ready because there was no recording it for later. Families sometimes hurried back from dinner so children would not miss a beloved show. Local stations varied from city to city, making television itself feel like part of the adventure. Travelers occasionally discovered programs unavailable in their hometown, or watched unfamiliar local news presenters discussing places they had never heard of. The limited choice encouraged families to watch together instead of everyone disappearing into separate rooms with personal devices. One detail that modern guests might find surprising is how much trust existed between hotels and travelers. Minibars were uncommon, but vending areas often operated with minimal supervision. Reception staff frequently recognized returning guests after only a few visits, especially traveling sales representatives who followed similar routes every month. Some employees remembered room preferences, favorite breakfast orders, or even the names of guests' children. This personal familiarity developed because interactions were face-to-face rather than filtered through apps loyalty algorithms, or automated messaging systems, seasonal holidays transformed many holiday inns into lively gathering places during Christmas. Lobbies filled with decorations, wreaths, and brightly wrapped presents belonging to travelling families. Thanksgiving brought busy restaurants, serving traditional meals to people unable to celebrate at home. Summer weekends overflowed with children splashing in pools from morning until sunset, while autumn saw football supporters filling rooms on their way to university games. The hotel reflected the changing rhythm of American life throughout the year, becoming far more than simply a place to spend the night. Business conferences held at Holiday Inns also looked remarkably different. Instead of giant projection screens and wireless presentations, meeting rooms featured overhead projectors, flip charts, chalkboards, slide projectors, and stacks of printed handouts. Coffee breaks encouraged genuine conversation because participants were not distracted by checking emails every few minutes. Deals were often negotiated during lunch or over evening drinks rather than through endless virtual meetings. The hotel's conference facilities helped thousands of companies grow during the decade, long before video conferencing became commonplace. Cleaning standards focused on visible cleanliness rather than invisible technology. Guests appreciated crisp sheets, polished mirrors, vacuumed carpets, and sparkling bathrooms. Nobody expected antimicrobial coatings, touch-free elevators, or ultraviolet sanitizing equipment, because such concepts had not yet entered everyday travel. What mattered most was the reassuring impression that someone genuinely cared for the property. Housekeepers took considerable pride in perfectly folded towels, neatly arranged pillows, and beds tucked tightly enough to bounce a coin. Weather emergencies often brought strangers together inside the hotel. Heavy thunderstorms, snowstorms, or hurricanes occasionally forced travelers to extend their stay unexpectedly. Rather than isolating themselves in rooms with streaming services, many guests gathered in the restaurant or lobby, sharing stories while waiting for roads to reopen. Children invented games with newfound friends, adults exchanged travel advice, and staff worked tirelessly to accommodate people whose journeys had suddenly been interrupted. These unplanned moments frequently became the memories families recalled most vividly years later. Perhaps the most remarkable difference between a 1970s Holiday Inn and today's hotels was the complete absence of constant digital distraction. Travelers were physically present in the moment because there was little alternative. Parents watched their children play instead of photographing every second. Families discussed tomorrow's route over dinner rather than scrolling through reviews. Couples sat beside the swimming pool, simply enjoying the evening air without feeling the need to document it online. The hotel became part of the holiday itself, instead of merely a backdrop for social media posts. In many ways, Holiday Inn offered something modern hotels, despite all their technology, struggle to recreate: the rare opportunity to slow down. The building provided shelter, comfort, and familiarity, but it also quietly encouraged something even more valuable. It encouraged people to notice where they were, appreciate who they were traveling with, and enjoy the simple pleasure of being together at the end of another long day on the open road. There was also something surprisingly ceremonial about arriving at a Holiday Inn after sunset. As darkness settled across the highway, the glowing green sign seemed even more dramatic against the night sky. Long before satellite navigation announced, "You have arrived," travelers depended on those bright lights to guide them. Families often breathed a sigh of relief the moment they spotted the familiar outline in the distance. After hours of staring through the windscreen, surrounded by unfamiliar roads and endless stretches of countryside, the sight of that illuminated sign meant the day's journey was finally over. Parents relaxed their grip on the steering wheel. Children suddenly became energetic again. And everyone knew that warm beds were only minutes away. Unlike many hotels today, Holiday Inns were designed around the idea that people were arriving by car, not by taxi or airport shuttle. Nearly every aspect of the property reflected this philosophy. Wide parking spaces accommodated large American vehicles with ease, and exterior lighting illuminated the car park throughout the night. Guests often left picnic coolers, beach equipment, or fishing gear inside their vehicles without giving it much thought. Opening the room door and seeing the family car parked just outside created a reassuring sense of convenience. If someone forgot a suitcase, a jacket, or a favorite toy, retrieving it took only a few moments. Morning routines followed a rhythm that has largely disappeared. Curtains were pulled open to reveal rows of parked cars, early sunlight reflecting off polished chrome bumpers. Travellers loaded luggage while birds sang overhead, and engines slowly came to life one by one. Some families enjoyed breakfast before setting off, while others packed sandwiches and continued driving. Children often climbed back into the same seats they had occupied the previous day. Surrounded by colouring books, pillows, blankets, and snack boxes carefully organised by parents. The Holiday Inn served as a temporary pause in the journey, rather than the destination itself. Yet those pauses often became some of the most memorable parts of the holiday. The staff themselves represented another important difference. Many employees remained with the same property for years, even decades. Receptionists recognized returning guests who traveled the same business routes every month. Housekeepers remembered families who returned each summer on their way to the beach or the mountains. This continuity created an atmosphere that felt remarkably personal. Guests were not simply reservation numbers stored inside a computer database. They were familiar faces whose stories gradually became known to the people working behind the desk. Children experienced a level of independence that seems unusual today. A youngster might be trusted to walk alone to the ice machine carrying the plastic bucket, visit the vending machine for a fizzy drink, or borrow extra towels from reception. Parents generally expected children to behave responsibly, and hotel staff often kept a friendly eye on them without making it obvious. It was common to see groups of children from different families inventing games around the pool while adults chatted nearby. Nobody exchanged phone numbers or created group chats to stay connected afterwards. By morning, everyone continued in different directions, leaving only pleasant memories behind. Even small inconveniences became accepted parts of travelling. If the television picture became fuzzy, someone adjusted the antenna. If the room felt too warm, the window might be opened slightly despite the humming air conditioner. If extra pillows were needed, guests called reception and waited patiently while an employee delivered them. There was little expectation that every problem would be solved instantly. Travellers adapted, improvised, and rarely allowed minor inconveniences to spoil an entire trip. The atmosphere inside the corridors also differed noticeably. Rather than hearing constant notification sounds, video calls, or streaming videos playing from mobile devices, guests mostly heard ordinary life unfolding. Suitcases rolled across concrete walkways. Doors opened and closed with solid mechanical clicks. Children laughed after returning from the swimming pool. Televisions quietly broadcast evening news or popular sitcoms, and ice buckets occasionally rattled as someone returned from the communal ice machine. These simple sounds blended into a comforting background that many former travelers still remember with surprising clarity. Holiday inns also reflected the changing social habits of the 1970s. Families were taking longer road trips than previous generations, thanks to America's expanding interstate highway system. More people owned reliable cars capable of traveling hundreds of miles comfortably. Holiday Inn grew alongside this new culture of mobility, becoming almost a companion to the American motorway itself. A family might stay at several different Holiday Inns during a 2-week holiday, each one similar enough to feel familiar, yet slightly different depending on the local architecture, climate, and surrounding landscape. Traveling with pets was another experience that required careful planning. Not every Holiday Inn accepted animals, and those that did often had specific rooms set aside for guests with pets. Families sometimes phoned ahead from roadside payphones to ask whether vacancies were available and whether their dog would be welcome. These conversations required trust because there were no online policies to read or customer reviews to confirm the information. A simple telephone conversation with a friendly receptionist often determined where the family would spend the night. The payphone itself was an essential feature that younger travelers might never have experienced. Positioned near reception or outside the restaurant, it served guests who needed to call home, confirm business appointments, or contact roadside assistance if their car developed problems. Travelers carried coins specifically for these calls. Occasionally someone stood beside the phone with a small notebook containing important telephone numbers, because memorizing dozens of contacts was far more common than it is today. There were no contact lists stored in a pocket-sized computer. Forgetting a phone number sometimes meant waiting until reaching the next destination. Another striking difference involved expectations of privacy. Hotel rooms did not contain voice assistants listening for commands, smart televisions connected to personal accounts, or wireless devices automatically linking to the internet. Once the door closed, guests were largely disconnected from the outside world, unless they deliberately picked up the telephone or turned on the television. For many families, this created an unexpected sense of freedom. Evenings were spent talking, playing cards, reading novels, or simply relaxing after a long drive without the endless interruptions that have become routine in modern life. The colours inside a typical Holiday Inn perfectly captured the design trends of the decade. Earth tones dominated almost everything. Deep browns, warm oranges, olive greens, mustard yellows, and golden beiges appeared in carpets, curtains, upholstery, and wallpaper. Brass fixtures gleamed beneath soft lighting, while textured fabrics added warmth to every room. To modern eyes, the style may seem unmistakably vintage, but during the 1970s, it represented fashionable comfort. Guests probably never imagined that future generations would look back on these interiors with such nostalgia. Seasonal decorations also carried a special charm. During Christmas, many Holiday Inns displayed large decorated trees in the lobby, wreaths on entrance doors, and festive lights around reception. Thanksgiving often brought autumn displays featuring pumpkins and colourful leaves. These decorations helped create the feeling that travellers were stopping not at an anonymous building, but at a welcoming place that acknowledged the time of year and shared in the celebrations. Perhaps most importantly, a Holiday Inn stay encouraged people to notice the places they were visiting rather than simply passing through them. Reception desks offered brochures for local museums, historical sites, scenic drives, state parks, and family attractions. Employees enthusiastically recommended favorite restaurants or little-known viewpoints that rarely appeared in national guidebooks. Without smartphones directing every movement, travelers often relied on these personal suggestions. Many unforgettable holiday memories began with a receptionist saying, "If you've got an hour, there is a beautiful place just a few miles down the road that most visitors never see." Looking back, the Holiday Inn of the 1970s represented more than comfortable accommodation. It embodied a style of travel built on patience, curiosity, and human interaction. Journeys unfolded gradually, conversations happened naturally, and every overnight stop became a small chapter in a much larger adventure. Today's hotels may offer faster Wi-Fi, contactless check, in-smart room controls, and countless modern conveniences. But the Holiday Inn of the 1970s belonged to a quieter world where the destination mattered, the journey mattered, and even an ordinary night beside the motorway could become a cherished family memory remembered for decades. For many travelers, one of the most unforgettable parts of staying at a Holiday Inn in the 1970s was the feeling that every location had its own personality, while still maintaining familiar standards. The building might look slightly different depending on whether it stood beside a Florida beach, along a quiet highway in Kansas, or outside a bustling city. Yet there was always something: the same welcoming sign, the same dependable cleanliness, the same courteous employees, and often the same layout, made guests feel almost as though they had returned to a favorite place. Even if they were hundreds of miles from the last Holiday Inn they had visited, that sense of familiarity helped reduce the stress of long-distance travel. In an era when so many other aspects of a journey remained uncertain, many modern hotels encourage guests to spend as little time as possible in the lobby. Self-check in kiosks, digital room keys, and online payment systems mean people often walk straight to their rooms without speaking to anyone. During the 1970s, however, the lobby served as the heart of the hotel. Comfortable armchairs, large potted plants, colourful carpets, and soft background music created an inviting atmosphere where people naturally gathered. Some guests waited for relatives to arrive. Others planned the next stage of their holiday, while business travellers arranged meetings or enjoyed a quiet cup of coffee. The lobby felt less like a passageway and more like a shared living room where strangers briefly became neighbours. The staff also played a far greater role in shaping a guest's stay. Receptionists were expected to know the surrounding area remarkably well. They recommended family attractions, suggested scenic driving routes, warned about road construction, and pointed visitors towards reliable local restaurants. If a family needed a mechanic, a nearby pharmacy, or directions to a national park, the front desk usually had the answer. There was no internet search to rely upon. Instead, guests trusted the experience and local knowledge of hotel employees, many of whom took genuine pride in helping travellers enjoy their journeys. Telephone operators represented another feature that has almost completely disappeared. Larger Holiday Inns often had switchboard operators who connected calls, took messages, and arranged wake-up calls. If someone phoned looking for a guest, the operator answered first before connecting the call to the room. Wake-up calls were delivered by an actual person speaking politely through the telephone, rather than an automated recording. Hearing a cheerful voice wish guests a pleasant morning added a small touch of warmth that technology has quietly replaced. Even the sounds inside the hotel were different from those heard today. The steady buzz of fluorescent lights, the distant ringing of telephones behind the reception desk, the rumble of luggage carts rolling across tiled floors, the laughter drifting from the swimming pool, the clatter of dishes from the restaurant kitchen, and the occasional slam of a heavy room door combined to create an unmistakable atmosphere. Unlike today's quieter hotels with soft electronic music and carefully controlled acoustics, a 1970s Holiday Inn felt alive with activity. You could hear families beginning their holidays, children racing excitedly through the corridors, and business travelers discussing tomorrow's appointments over dinner. Breakfast was rarely something grabbed in a paper bag before rushing out the door. Families often treated it as an important part of the holiday itself. Children eagerly chose pancakes topped with syrup, scrambled eggs, or stacks of toast while parents lingered over coffee, discussing the day's driving plans. Waitresses frequently chatted with younger guests, asking where they were traveling and whether they were excited about visiting Disneyland, the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, or another famous destination. Those small conversations helped create a welcoming atmosphere that many travelers remembered long after they had forgotten the exact appearance of their room. Holiday Inn also became closely associated with America's growing culture of road trips. During the decades following the construction of the interstate highway system, millions of families discovered the freedom of exploring the country by car. Summer holidays often covered thousands of miles, with parents carefully planning fuel stops, picnic lunches, and overnight accommodation. Holiday Inn became woven into those memories because it appeared at exactly the right moment, usually after a long day when everyone was tired, hungry, and eager to stretch their legs. The sight of its illuminated sign often brought an immediate sense of relief, especially after driving unfamiliar roads in darkness. Children often viewed the hotel room as an adventure in itself. 2 large beds seemed enormous compared with those at home. Jumping from one mattress to the other while parents unpacked became a familiar ritual, despite repeated warnings to stop. Some rooms included small balconies overlooking the pool, where youngsters leaned over the railings counting swimmers below. Others faced busy car parks where children watched vehicles arriving from distant states, trying to guess where each family had traveled from. Every new arrival hinted at another story unfolding alongside their own. Another detail that surprises modern travelers is how much smoking influenced everyday hotel life. Ashtrays appeared almost everywhere, in guest rooms, restaurants, meeting rooms, and even beside the reception desk. Smoking was considered so ordinary that many rooms automatically included matches bearing the Holiday Inn logo. Guests who did not smoke simply accepted the faint smell of tobacco as part of traveling. Only decades later would smoking gradually disappear from hotels altogether, fundamentally changing the atmosphere of indoor public spaces. Business meetings inside Holiday Inns were equally significant. Conference rooms frequently hosted sales conventions, company training sessions, community banquets, wedding receptions, and local celebrations. On any given evening, one part of the hotel might contain holidaying families, while another welcomed businessmen attending seminars or local residents celebrating anniversaries. This mixture of visitors gave the hotel an energy that extended far beyond overnight accommodation. Holiday Inn functioned as an important community gathering place in many towns, especially those without large convention centers. The hotel's swimming pool became even more magical after sunset. Soft lights reflected across the water, while warm summer evenings encouraged families to stay outside long after dinner. Parents relaxed in deck chairs, talking quietly, as children made the most of every final minute before bedtime. The scent of freshly cut grass mixed with chlorine, distant traffic, and warm night air created memories that many people would later associate forever with childhood holidays. Unlike today's heavily scheduled family trips packed with activities, these evenings often unfolded slowly, allowing everyone simply to enjoy being together. The gift of anonymity also felt different. Travelers came from every corner of the country, each carrying unique stories, accents, and experiences. It was entirely possible to share breakfast beside someone driving from New York to California, another family returning from the Rocky Mountains, and a businessman visiting 6 states in 1 week. These brief encounters reminded people how vast the country truly was. Conversations began easily because almost everyone shared one thing in common: they were traveling. Perhaps what makes the Holiday Inn of the 1970s seem so different today is that it existed before convenience became invisible. Every task required a little more effort. Maps had to be unfolded. Doors had to be unlocked with metal keys. Television channels had to be changed manually. Ice had to be collected from a machine down the corridor. Film had to be developed before photographs could be seen. Reservations had to be confirmed by telephone or letter. Bills had to be settled at the reception desk before departure. None of these tasks seemed inconvenient because they represented the normal rhythm of travel. In many ways, those small efforts encouraged people to notice their surroundings instead of rushing through them. When guests finally checked out, there was no email receipt waiting in their inbox or mobile notification thanking them for their stay. They returned their room key, collected the printed bill, loaded their suitcases back into the family car, and drove away towards the next destination. Within minutes, another traveller would pull into the same parking space, beginning a completely different journey. Yet for millions of families, those overnight stays blended together into cherished memories of childhood summers, cross-country adventures, and simpler times. Looking back, the Holiday Inn of the 1970s was far more than just a hotel. It became a familiar companion on the open road, offering comfort, predictability, and a warm welcome during an age when travelling itself still felt like one of life's greatest adventures. There was also something surprisingly formal about the way guests interacted with hotel staff. Employees were expected to be courteous, well-groomed, and attentive, and guests generally responded with the same level of politeness. Receptionists often wore neatly pressed uniforms, name badges, and carefully styled hair, while restaurant staff moved efficiently through dining rooms, carrying heavy trays balanced effortlessly on one hand. The relationship felt more personal than transactional. If a family stayed for several nights, staff members frequently remembered their names, asked how their day had gone, or recommended a nearby attraction that might suit their interests. Returning guests occasionally discovered that employees remembered them from previous holidays, something far less common in today's enormous hotel chains, where digital systems often replace personal familiarity. For many travelers, simply having a color television in the room still felt like a luxury. Although color television had become increasingly common during the 1970s, not every household owned the newest or largest set. Children sometimes became just as excited about watching cartoons or evening programs in the hotel as they were about visiting tourist attractions during the day. Parents often allowed them to stay awake a little later than usual because holidays followed different rules. Families gathered around the television together rather than each person watching separate screens, creating shared memories from programs that millions of other Americans happened to be watching at the very same moment. The room itself often contained small details that modern guests rarely notice because they have disappeared completely. Thick glass ashtrays rested on bedside tables or desks, reflecting how socially accepted smoking remained. A printed directory sat beside the telephone, explaining hotel services, local attractions, emergency numbers, restaurant hours, and nearby churches for Sunday services. A notepad bearing the Holiday Inn logo invited guests to leave messages or jot down directions. Pens occasionally disappeared into suitcases as accidental souvenirs, eventually turning up months later in kitchen drawers back home. The curtains usually deserved attention of their own. Unlike today's lightweight blackout blinds hidden behind decorative fabric, hotel curtains during the 1970s were often heavy, richly coloured, and dramatically patterned. Drawing them closed at night felt almost theatrical. During the morning, pulling them open revealed the family car parked only a few meters away, perhaps still loaded with luggage for the next stage of the journey. Parents often stood by the window for a moment, coffee in hand, quietly checking the weather before deciding whether jackets would be needed that day. Even the sounds inside a Holiday Inn belonged to another era. Instead of hearing smartphone notifications, wireless earbuds, or video calls through thin walls, guests listened to different noises altogether. Suitcase latches snapped open. Ice clinked into plastic buckets. Car doors slammed outside. Children laughed around the swimming pool until sunset. Someone's television played an evening news broadcast. A payphone in the lobby rang sharply before being answered by the receptionist. Occasionally, the distinctive ding of an ice machine echoed along the outdoor walkway as another guest prepared drinks for the evening. These ordinary sounds combined into an atmosphere that many people later described with remarkable affection. The hotel's payphones played a much larger role than anyone today might imagine. Long before mobile phones existed, the payphone served as an essential lifeline for travelers. Parents called relatives to announce that they had arrived safely. Business travelers confirmed appointments. Teenagers phoned friends back home to describe their adventures. Small queues occasionally formed in the lobby during busy evenings, as guests waited patiently with pockets full of coins. Conversations were often brief, because every minute cost money, yet those few minutes carried genuine importance. Holiday Inn also became famous for welcoming families rather than treating children as inconveniences. Staff expected energetic youngsters to run excitedly towards the swimming pool or ask endless questions at reception. Many restaurants offered children's menus, colouring sheets, or simple activities to keep younger guests occupied while meals were prepared. During school holidays, hotel corridors echoed with bicycles, inflatable pool toys, and cheerful voices from families beginning or ending another day of sightseeing. Rather than attempting to create an atmosphere of quiet luxury, many Holiday Inns embraced the lively energy that accompanied family travel. The swimming pool itself often became the heart of the property. On warm afternoons, nearly every sun lounger filled with parents reading paperback novels, chatting with neighbours from adjacent rooms, or simply watching children play in the water. There were no waterproof Bluetooth speakers filling the air with personalised playlists. Instead, Music drifted gently from the restaurant or poolside speakers, usually playing soft rock, easy listening, or popular hits of the decade. The atmosphere felt relaxed rather than carefully curated. Children invented games without organized entertainment staff, while adults exchanged travel tips gathered from thousands of miles on the road. If rain interrupted holiday plans, families adapted differently than they might today. Without streaming platforms or endless internet browsing, rainy afternoons encouraged board games spread across hotel beds, card games at small tables, crossword puzzles from newspapers, or visits to nearby museums suggested by the receptionist. Many parents packed travel versions of Monopoly, Scrabble, or playing cards specifically because they expected occasional bad weather. These quiet evenings often became unexpectedly memorable because everyone participated together instead of retreating into separate digital worlds. Another striking difference involved expectations surrounding comfort. Today's travelers often judge hotels by luxury mattresses, spa, quality bathrooms, rainfall showers, espresso machines, and lighting. Fast Wi-Fi during the 1970s, satisfaction came from much simpler achievements. Was the bed comfortable? Was the room clean? Did the air conditioner keep the room cool? Was there plenty of hot water? Did the restaurant serve a decent breakfast? If the answer to those questions was yes, guests generally considered the hotel excellent. Reviews were shared through conversations with friends and neighbors rather than posted online for thousands of strangers to read. For international visitors, staying at a Holiday Inn offered a reassuring glimpse into everyday American life. The breakfast menu, the cheerful waitresses pouring endless coffee, the enormous cars filling the car park, the families setting off early for national parks or theme parks, and the friendly conversations in the lobby all combined to create an experience that felt unmistakably American. Many overseas tourists remembered Holiday Inn not simply as accommodation, but as an introduction to the culture itself. There was also a remarkable sense of optimism surrounding travel during the decade. America's interstate highway system had opened vast new possibilities for family holidays, and Holiday Inn grew alongside that expansion. Every new motorway exit seemed to promise another familiar green sign waiting just beyond the junction. Families who had once travelled only short distances suddenly found themselves confidently crossing several states during a single summer holiday. Children collected maps, brochures, postcards, and souvenirs from places they had previously known only from school books. The hotel became one small but dependable part of those much larger adventures. As the decade drew to a close, technology slowly began changing the hotel industry, but the essence of the 1970s Holiday Inn remained rooted in a world that valued consistency, personal service, and uncomplicated hospitality. It belonged to an age when travel still involved uncertainty, discovery, and occasional inconvenience. Yet perhaps those very inconveniences made the experience more memorable. Because photographs were limited, people paid closer attention to the scenery. Because there was no internet, families spoke to one another more often. Because directions came from maps and friendly locals, unexpected discoveries happened almost every day. Because nobody could instantly contact home at any moment, holidays truly felt like an escape from ordinary life. For millions of people, remembering a Holiday Inn from the 1970s is not simply remembering a hotel. It is remembering an entire way of travelling that has almost disappeared. It recalls warm evenings beside outdoor pools, the glow of neon signs against darkening skies, station wagons packed with luggage, fresh waffles served by smiling waitresses, children proudly carrying plastic buckets to the ice machine, paper maps folded across the bonnet of a family car, and the comforting click of a heavy metal key opening the door to a room that would become home for just one night before the journey began again with the morning sun. Another aspect that would immediately surprise a modern guest was how much Holiday Inn functioned as a community gathering place, rather than simply a place where people slept. Today, many hotel lobbies are quiet spaces where guests pass through quickly while looking at their phones or heading directly to their rooms. In the 1970s, however, the lobby often remained lively throughout the day. Comfortable armchairs surrounded low coffee tables, stacked with magazines, local newspapers, and travel brochures. Families rested after long drives, business travellers discussed appointments, and elderly couples chatted about the places they had visited. Children wandered over to brochure racks searching for nearby zoos, amusement parks, or historic attractions. The hotel became a crossroads where people from every corner of the country briefly shared the same space before continuing their separate journeys. Holiday Inn also played an important role during America's Great Road Trip era because flying was still expensive for many families. Driving remained the preferred way to see the country, allowing parents to stop at national parks, roadside attractions, museums, and scenic viewpoints whenever they wished. This meant Holiday Inns welcomed an incredibly diverse collection of guests every evening. One room might contain newlyweds travelling across the country after their wedding. Next door could be grandparents visiting relatives several states away. Across the courtyard might be a travelling salesman carrying samples for dozens of shops, while another room housed a family on their very first holiday together. Every car park told hundreds of different stories, all temporarily connected by a single night's stay. For many children, the Holiday Inn itself became one of the highlights of the holiday, rather than merely a stop between destinations. After hours confined inside a car, even simple experiences felt exciting, running across freshly cut grass, exploring the outdoor walkways, pressing the button for the ice machine, watching parents check in at reception, or finding the room number became memorable adventures. Some children immediately jumped onto the beds the moment the luggage arrived, while others rushed to open the curtains and inspect the view outside. A room overlooking the swimming pool was considered especially lucky because it allowed them to watch other families enjoying themselves while eagerly waiting for their own turn to swim. The rooms themselves often contained little details that reflected the era. A large illustrated Bible frequently rested inside the bedside drawer. A printed hotel directory explained everything from restaurant opening hours to emergency procedures. Beside the telephone sat a notepad bearing the Holiday Inn logo, along with a matching pencil for writing messages or directions. Many guests took these small stationery items home as souvenirs. The alarm clock was mechanical, producing a loud ticking sound throughout the night, and an even louder ringing alarm in the morning that seemed impossible to ignore. Unlike today's smartphones, there was no gentle vibration or gradual increase in volume. When it rang, everyone in the room woke up immediately. Heating and cooling also demanded more attention from guests. Air conditioning controls were often simple dials with only a few settings, requiring travellers to adjust them manually until the room reached a comfortable temperature. During colder months, heating systems sometimes produced clanking pipes or humming fans that modern guests might mistake for faults. Yet, such sounds were considered perfectly ordinary. Every hotel possessed its own unique collection of creaks, rattles, and mechanical noises that became part of its personality. The smell of a Holiday Inn in the 1970s would probably surprise visitors even more than its appearance. The aroma combined freshly vacuumed carpets, furniture polish, chlorine drifting from the swimming pool, coffee brewing in the restaurant, cigarette smoke lingering in designated areas, and occasionally the faint scent of cleaning products used by housekeeping. It created an atmosphere that countless travelers instantly recognized. Years later, many people recalled that distinctive mixture of smells with remarkable clarity because it became permanently associated with family holidays and summer road trips. Unlike today's highly personalized travel experiences, hotel rooms looked almost identical regardless of who occupied them. Guests did not expect personalized welcome messages, customized television recommendations, smartphone, controlled lighting, or loyalty gifts waiting on the bed. Every room followed nearly the same layout, making repeat visits wonderfully familiar. Families returning year after year immediately knew where the light switches were located, where extra blankets were stored, and how to operate the television. That consistency created a comforting sense of routine during journeys that otherwise involved constant change. Another forgotten feature involved wake-up calls. Instead of relying on mobile phone alarms, many travelers requested a wake-up call from reception before going to bed. Early the next morning, the hotel operator personally telephoned the room at the requested time. A friendly voice simply announced, "Good morning. This is your wake-up call." If nobody answered after several rings, staff sometimes called again to ensure guests did not oversleep. It was a surprisingly personal service that disappeared as digital alarm clocks and mobile phones became universal. The swimming pool possessed its own daily rhythm. Early mornings belonged to adults quietly swimming laps before breakfast. Mid-morning brought families with young children wearing inflatable armbands and carrying colourful beach towels. By afternoon, teenagers gathered around the deeper end, while younger children played games under their parents' supervision. Evenings often became the busiest time of all, with travellers cooling off after hours spent driving beneath the summer sun. There were no waterproof Bluetooth speakers filling the air with music, no one filming videos for social media, and very few distractions beyond conversation and laughter. The sounds consisted mainly of splashing water, cheerful shouting, and the occasional whistle from a lifeguard, if one happened to be on duty. Holiday Inns also reflected changing fashions of the decade. Guests checked in wearing flared trousers, colourful patterned shirts, wide collars, polyester dresses, platform shoes, and oversized sunglasses. Men's sideburns were common, while women often wore feathered hairstyles that required careful attention before heading to dinner. Looking through photographs from the era instantly reveals how much fashion transformed the appearance of even ordinary hotel guests. What seemed stylish and modern then now appears unmistakably tied to the 1970s. Television programming shaped evenings in ways difficult to imagine today. Because only a handful of channels were available, millions of Americans often watched exactly the same programs at the same time. If a popular sitcom, sporting event, or evening news broadcast happened to be airing, Hotel corridors became unusually quiet as guests settled into their rooms. Missing a favorite program meant waiting until it was repeated weeks or months later, if at all. There was no recording it, streaming it later, or catching highlights online. Television schedules dictated people's evenings, rather than the other way around. One charming ritual occurred every morning as guests prepared to continue their journeys. Cars were carefully repacked with military precision. Suitcases disappeared into enormous boots. Coolers filled with ice from the hotel machine were restocked with drinks and sandwiches. Parents folded paper maps across the bonnet while discussing the day's route. Children claimed their favourite seats before siblings could take them. Finally, after one last glance to ensure nothing had been forgotten inside the room, families returned their heavy metal key to reception, climbed into the car, and drove away. Within minutes, housekeeping staff began preparing the room for the next travellers, continuing a cycle repeated thousands of times every day across the country. Perhaps the most remarkable difference between a Holiday Inn in the 1970s and a hotel today was the feeling that travel itself remained an event rather than a routine. Every overnight stay marked genuine progress on a long journey. Every hotel represented another chapter in the adventure. Guests rarely obsessed over star ratings, online reviews, loyalty status, Wi-Fi speeds, or social media photographs. Instead, they judged their stay using far simpler standards. Was the room clean? Did everyone sleep well? Was the breakfast satisfying? Did the children enjoy the swimming pool? Was the staff friendly? If the answer to those questions was yes, the hotel had done exactly what it promised. That simple philosophy explains why Holiday Inn became such an enduring symbol of American travel during the decade. It offered reliability in an age before digital certainty, comfort in the middle of long highways, and familiarity in unfamiliar places. For millions of families, its glowing sign did not merely advertise empty rooms. It represented the welcome sight that ended another day's drive, the beginning of another evening filled with shared stories, and one more unforgettable stop along the open road of the 1970s. There was also something remarkably reassuring about the routines that unfolded inside every Holiday Inn. Routines that modern hotels have largely replaced with automation. Early each morning, housekeeping carts rolled slowly along the outdoor walkways, their shelves stacked neatly with fresh towels, folded sheets, tiny bars of soap, rolls of toilet paper and cleaning supplies. The sound of doors opening and closing mixed with the rumble of vacuum cleaners, and cheerful greetings exchanged between staff and guests. Housekeepers often recognized returning visitors who traveled the same business routes every month, asking about their families or wishing them a safe journey. The relationship felt surprisingly personal because the hotel staff were not hidden behind technology. They became familiar faces who contributed to the feeling that Holiday Inn was almost a home away from home. One feature that modern travellers might completely overlook was how important the hotel's location was. During the 1970s, Holiday Inns were often built close to newly expanding interstate highways, making them ideal stopping points for long-distance motorists. From the upper floor walkways, guests could sometimes hear the distant hum of traffic continuing through the night. Rather than finding this disturbing, many travellers found it oddly comforting. The steady stream of passing cars reminded them that countless other families were also making their way across the country, each with destinations, dreams, and stories of their own. The parking area became an extension of family life during these journeys. Parents sometimes unpacked picnic coolers directly beside the car, allowing children to eat sandwiches before checking in. Others cleaned insects from windscreens or checked engine oil after driving hundreds of miles through summer heat. Fathers frequently lifted the bonnet to inspect the engine while neighbours from nearby rooms wandered over to admire the vehicle or offer friendly advice. Conversations about petrol prices, road conditions, fuel economy and reliable family cars were almost as common as discussions about holiday destinations. Cars were not simply transportation, they represented freedom, and Holiday Inn was built specifically to serve that culture of freedom. Even pets travelled differently. While many hotels today advertise pet-friendly policies complete with special beds and treats, travelling with animals during the 1970s often required careful planning. Some Holiday Inns accepted pets under specific conditions, while others did not. Families occasionally kept dogs in the car briefly, while arranging accommodation or searched for nearby boarding kennels if necessary. The rules varied considerably, making each journey slightly more unpredictable than modern travellers might expect. Children also discovered small pleasures that would seem almost unbelievably simple today. Finding a complimentary mint on the reception desk, receiving a colourful postcard featuring the hotel, collecting matchbooks with the Holiday Inn logo, or watching the illuminated sign glow brightly after sunset could become memorable highlights. Without endless digital entertainment competing for attention, these tiny experiences felt much larger. A child might spend several minutes watching the fountain in the courtyard or counting how many rooms overlooked the swimming pool, finding excitement in details that adults barely noticed. The hotel restaurant often reflected regional tastes in a way that chain restaurants today sometimes struggle to match. Although Holiday Inn maintained certain standards, local chefs frequently incorporated dishes popular in their part of the country. Travelers moving from the American South to the Midwest or the West Coast could notice subtle differences in breakfast menus, desserts, and local specialities. Staff members proudly recommended nearby attractions and family-owned restaurants that visitors would never have discovered otherwise. The hotel became not just a place to sleep, but an introduction to the surrounding community. Another forgotten part of the experience involved entertainment inside the room after dark. Once the curtains were drawn and the television switched off, the room became surprisingly quiet. There were no glowing smartphone screens lighting up every corner. No laptops hummed on the desk. No tablets streamed films while children wore wireless headphones. Instead, families often talked. Parents discussed the day's adventures while children described their favourite sights. They planned tomorrow's route together, debated which attractions to visit, and laughed about wrong turns or unexpected discoveries. These conversations, uninterrupted by notifications or incoming messages, often became some of the most meaningful moments of the entire holiday. Busyness conventions also gave many Holiday Inns a completely different atmosphere from today's hotels. Conference rooms filled with rows of metal folding chairs hosted sales meetings, training sessions, civic organizations, and community events. Local residents attended charity dinners, wedding receptions, school banquets, and business luncheons inside the same building where travelers spent the night. It was not unusual for a hotel ballroom to transform from a corporate seminar during the day into a wedding reception that evening, complete with live music and dancing. Holiday Inns serve not only travellers, but also the local community, giving each property a sense of belonging rather than existing solely for visitors passing through. Technology behind the scenes remained wonderfully mechanical. Receptionists manually sorted room keys into numbered compartments behind the desk. Large switchboards connected incoming telephone calls. Reservation systems depended heavily on printed ledgers, filing cabinets, and handwritten records rather than centralized computer databases. If someone telephoned to book a room for the following month, a staff member physically wrote the reservation into a book. During especially busy weekends, employees carefully checked every entry to avoid double bookings, a task requiring concentration rather than computer software. An unexpected difference involved silence itself. Modern hotels are filled with the constant glow and sound of electronic devices. In the 1970s, evenings settled into a far gentler rhythm. After dinner, guests might stroll around the grounds, sit outside their rooms enjoying the cooler night air, or simply watch the stars before going to bed. Without portable music players, endless social media feeds, or streaming services demanding attention, many people naturally embraced quieter moments. The pace of life slowed almost automatically. Holiday Inn advertisements of the era often emphasized smiles, families, swimming pools, and dependable comfort rather than luxury. They understood exactly what weary travellers wanted after a long day on the road. Nobody expected marble bathrooms, rooftop cocktail bars, or spa treatments. Instead, they wanted soft beds, reliable hot water, friendly service, and perhaps an ice-cold drink beside the pool while children burned off the last of their energy before bedtime. That straightforward promise resonated with millions because it matched the realities of family travel during the decade. Perhaps the greatest contrast with modern hotels lies in how people remembered their stays. Today, many travelers photograph every corner of a hotel, upload reviews before checking out, and compare every detail with dozens of previous experiences. A stay is often measured through ratings, points, and online comments. In the 1970s, memories were carried almost entirely in people's minds. Years later, someone might remember the enormous glowing Holiday Inn sign reflected in the car window, the smell of chlorine drifting through the evening air, the excitement of receiving a room overlooking the pool, or the comforting feeling of climbing into crisp sheets after driving all day. These memories were not preserved by thousands of digital photographs, but by the emotions attached to them. Looking back now, the Holiday Inn of the 1970s represents far more than an old hotel chain. It captures a moment in history when travel was slower, journeys felt longer, and every overnight stop became part of the adventure itself. It belonged to a world where maps unfolded across bonnets, strangers became friends over breakfast, children created games without screens, and the glowing green sign beside the motorway promised something wonderfully simple: a clean room, a warm welcome, and the chance to rest before tomorrow's road stretched out once again beneath the morning sun. As darkness settled across the motorway, the famous Holiday Inn sign became even more impressive. Long before satellite navigation or illuminated smartphone maps guided drivers, that enormous glowing sign served almost like a lighthouse for motorists. Its bright green light stood high above nearby buildings, visible from remarkable distances, quietly announcing that a comfortable bed was waiting somewhere just beyond the next exit. After spending 10 or 12 hours on the road, many families felt a genuine sense of relief the moment those lights appeared in the distance. Parents often smiled, children cheered from the back seat, and everyone knew that the day's journey was finally coming to an end. Few hotel brands have ever achieved that level of emotional recognition. Unlike today's travelers, who often choose hotels based on dozens of online photographs, people in the 1970s relied heavily on reputation. Holiday Inn had spent years building trust through consistency, and that trust became one of its greatest strengths. A family traveling from Florida to California had no idea what every town would look like, but they knew roughly what to expect when they pulled into a Holiday Inn. The lobby would feel familiar. The rooms would follow a similar layout. The beds would be clean. The restaurant would serve dependable meals. That predictability reduced much of the anxiety that came with long-distance travel in an era when reliable information was far harder to obtain. Even arriving late at night created a different experience. There were no brightly lit self-service kiosks or automated check-in terminals. Instead, the receptionist greeted tired travelers face to face, sometimes after midnight, with the same warmth shown earlier in the evening. The clerk might ask how far the family had travelled, recommend breakfast times, or offer advice about road construction ahead. These conversations lasted only a minute or two, yet they added a human touch that many travellers remembered long after the holiday ended. Holiday Inn also reflected the optimism of the post-war decades. America was expanding rapidly, suburbs were growing, and millions of families were discovering the joy of exploring the country by car. The hotel chain grew alongside this movement, becoming almost a symbol of modern family travel. New properties seemed to appear everywhere as fresh stretches of interstate highway connected cities that had once felt much farther apart. Staying at a Holiday Inn represented participation in that exciting new era of mobility, where ordinary families could travel farther than previous generations had ever imagined. Dunn's small but memorable detail involved the curtains. Unlike the lightweight blinds common in many hotels today, Holiday Inn rooms often featured thick, heavy curtains designed to block the morning sun. Parents appreciated them after exhausting days of driving because they allowed everyone to sleep a little longer. Children, however, frequently woke early with excitement, pulling the curtains open to see what lay outside. Sometimes the view revealed the sparkling swimming pool already being cleaned. Other times it overlooked rows of parked cars, nearby forests, distant mountains, or another stretch of busy motorway. Every morning brought a completely different scene. Breakfast carried its own comforting routine. Families slowly gathered in the restaurant wearing casual holiday clothes, rather than rushing out with takeaway coffee. Waitresses poured endless refills, while cooks worked behind open grills, preparing eggs, pancakes, sausages, toast, and hash browns. The smell alone tempted even those who had planned to skip breakfast. Newspapers rested on nearby tables, and conversations drifted between politics, weather, baseball scores, and holiday plans. Nobody hurried diners out to free tables for the next customers. Meals unfolded at a relaxed pace that matched the rhythm of the journey itself. For business travelers, Evenings often meant gathering in the hotel lounge after work. Instead of returning immediately to their rooms, colleagues discussed the day's meetings over drinks while watching televised sporting events or simply exchanging stories about life on the road. Many travelling sales representatives spent hundreds of nights each year in Holiday Inns, becoming so familiar with the chain that different locations almost blended together into one enormous nationwide home. Staff frequently recognized these regular guests and greeted them by name whenever possible, creating relationships that lasted for years. Holiday Inn also became famous for hosting celebrations that had nothing to do with travel. Local families booked banquet halls for weddings, anniversaries, birthday parties, graduation dinners, and charity events. On Saturday evenings, one part of the hotel might be filled with travellers passing through town, while another echoed with live bands, dancing, laughter, and wedding speeches. Children staying overnight sometimes peeked curiously through ballroom doors, fascinated by elegantly dressed guests celebrating special occasions. This mixture of local life and travelling visitors gave the hotels an atmosphere that felt far more connected to their communities than many modern chain hotels. The gift of anonymity also appealed to many guests. During the 1970s, checking into a Holiday Inn allowed people to step briefly away from everyday responsibilities. Without constant telephone calls, emails, or instant messages, the outside world became surprisingly distant. Office problems remained back at the office. School concerns stayed at home. News arrived only through newspapers or scheduled television broadcasts. For a short while, families focused almost entirely on the journey itself, rather than everything happening elsewhere. Even rainy days had a distinctive charm. Heavy raindrops tapped steadily against the windows, while travellers watched passing cars splash through puddles outside. Inside, the room felt warm and secure. Parents read novels, children coloured in activity books, and the television quietly played afternoon programs. The weather transformed the hotel into a cosy refuge rather than merely a temporary stop. Some families later remembered these quiet, rainy afternoons just as fondly as visits to famous tourist attractions. Another striking difference involved expectations of luxury. Modern travellers often expect gyms, spas, charging stations, smart televisions, high-speed internet designer toiletries, and personalised services. Holiday Inn in the 1970s promised none of those things, yet guests often left completely satisfied. Comfort meant a firm mattress, fresh linen, reliable plumbing, polite staff, and perhaps a good meal before bed. Happiness came from simple reliability rather than endless choice. Perhaps what people miss most when remembering those Holiday Inns is not a particular piece of furniture or a favourite meal, but the feeling of being temporarily disconnected from the pressures of ordinary life once the room door closed behind them. The journey slowed. There were no urgent notifications demanding attention, no endless scrolling through news feeds, and no pressure to document every moment for people back home. Families talked, laughed, planned tomorrow's drive, watched a little television, and gradually drifted off to sleep with the gentle hum of the air conditioner filling the room. When morning arrived, sunlight filtered through the curtains, suitcases were packed once again, and the familiar ritual began all over. The room key returned to the reception desk, the luggage disappeared into the boot of the family car, maps unfolded across the bonnet, and engines started one by one as travelers headed towards their next destination. Within an hour, a completely different family would probably occupy the very same room, beginning another chapter in their own holiday story. That endless cycle continued day after day throughout the decade, making Holiday Inn far more than just a successful hotel chain. It became woven into the memories of an entire generation. Millions of children grew up associating its glowing sign with summer holidays, adventure, and the excitement of discovering somewhere new. Millions of parents remembered it as the dependable place where tired families could finally relax after another long day on America's open roads. In an age before digital convenience transformed every aspect of travel, Holiday Inn offered something equally valuable: certainty, familiarity, and a warm welcome that felt reassuringly the same, no matter how many miles had been travelled to reach its front door. One of the most overlooked differences was the way time seemed to stretch during a stay. Today, hotel visits are often carefully scheduled down to the minute. Guests arrive just before check-in, quickly unpack, answer emails, order food through an app, and leave early the next morning. During the 1970s, however, people were far less obsessed with squeezing every possible activity into the day. After arriving at a Holiday Inn, many families simply relaxed. Children explored the grounds. Parents sat outside the room in folding chairs. They had packed in the car, and grandparents enjoyed watching the evening slowly settle over the property. There was no feeling that every spare moment had to be productive. The hotel itself became part of the holiday, rather than merely a place between destinations. The sounds of a Holiday Inn were completely different from those of modern hotels. Instead of hearing smartphones buzzing with notifications or luggage wheels clicking across polished floors, guests were surrounded by more mechanical noises. Ice machines clattered every few minutes as someone filled a plastic bucket. The soda vending machine produced a heavy thump whenever a glass bottle dropped into place. Doors closed with solid metal clicks as guests returned from dinner. Cars occasionally started in the car park as late arrivals checked in or early risers prepared to leave before sunrise. Somewhere nearby, a swimming pool filter hummed quietly throughout the night. These ordinary sounds blended together into an atmosphere that became instantly familiar to anyone who travelled regularly during the decade. Even the lighting created a different mood. Hotel rooms were rarely flooded with bright white light. Instead, warm yellow lamps stood on bedside tables and beside armchairs, creating a cozy atmosphere during the evening. Hallways and outdoor walkways were gently illuminated rather than brightly lit, allowing the glowing Holiday Inn sign to dominate the night sky. Walking back from dinner beneath those lights, with warm summer air replacing the heat of the day, became a small pleasure that many travellers later remembered with surprising affection. Weather often shaped the entire experience because people spent far more time outdoors. If temperatures were pleasant, families gathered beside the pool until sunset. Children played tag across grassy courtyards, while adults chatted on benches or outside their rooms. During autumn evenings, travellers wrapped themselves in light jackets while enjoying the crisp air before retiring for the night. Unlike today's guests, who frequently remain indoors connected to Wi-Fi, visitors naturally interacted with the hotel's outdoor spaces, because that was where much of the activity happened. Holiday Inn also introduced many travellers to the idea of standardized hospitality. Before large hotel chains expanded across the country, Every independently owned motel operated differently. One might have comfortable beds but poor food. Another offered friendly staff but unreliable plumbing. Holiday Inn worked hard to remove those uncertainties by maintaining similar standards wherever possible. Guests appreciated knowing that the room would probably include the same basic furniture, similar bathroom fittings, dependable air conditioning, and courteous service whether they were in Texas, Ohio, Arizona, or Georgia. That reliability was genuinely innovative during the era. For children, every hotel seemed enormous. Long outdoor balconies stretched endlessly above the car park. Staircases led to mysterious upper levels, and rows of identical doors invited endless curiosity. Walking with parents to find room 214 or room 136 felt like exploring an unfamiliar little town. Every corner promised something interesting, whether it was an ice machine, a drinks machine, a colourful flower bed, or another family unpacking luggage after a long drive. Without digital distractions competing for attention, even ordinary surroundings became exciting places to investigate. Many Holiday Inns displayed attractive landscaping that distinguished them from simpler roadside motels. Neatly trimmed hedges, colourful flower beds, decorative fountains, and carefully maintained lawns gave guests the impression that they had arrived somewhere special. Employees spent countless hours maintaining these outdoor areas because first impressions mattered enormously. Travelers often judged the quality of the hotel before even entering the reception area, and a tidy exterior reassured them that similar care had been taken inside. Another forgotten detail was the importance of printed information. Reception desks offered maps, brochures, restaurant menus, local attraction guides, and event leaflets neatly arranged in wooden racks. Guests collected handfuls of these papers before heading to their rooms, spreading them across beds later that evening, while deciding what to visit the following day. There was something satisfying about physically circling attractions with a pen, folding maps along well-worn creases, and debating whether a scenic detour would be worth the extra miles. Every decision required discussion because there was no search engine to instantly answer every question. Travelling during holiday weekends created particularly memorable scenes. Holiday Inns buzzed with activity as dozens of families arrived within a few hours of one another. Car parks filled rapidly. Children hurried towards the swimming pool, carrying brightly coloured inflatable rings. Restaurants became lively with conversation, and reception staff worked tirelessly to welcome everyone. Despite the crowds, there was often an atmosphere of shared excitement because nearly every guest was beginning or continuing a family adventure. The smell of breakfast drifting through the hotel early each morning became one of those small sensory memories that stayed with people for decades. Fresh coffee, sizzling bacon, toasted bread, butter melting over pancakes, and the sweet aroma of maple syrup drifted through corridors as guests gradually made their way downstairs. Even those who intended to eat elsewhere often found themselves tempted by the familiar scents coming from the restaurant. Unlike many hotels today, where guests may never speak to another visitor, Holiday Inns encouraged casual conversations, almost without trying. Someone waiting for the ice machine might recommend a nearby national park. Parents sitting beside the pool exchanged travel tips while watching their children swim. Business travelers discussed weather conditions affecting tomorrow's drive. Elderly couples proudly described the places they had already visited during retirement tours of the country. These brief interactions added warmth to the experience and reminded travellers that countless other people were sharing the same roads, even if only for a single evening. As the decade progressed, Holiday Inn also became a symbol of changing American lifestyles. More families owned reliable cars capable of crossing several states without difficulty. Motorways continued expanding, making distant destinations easier to reach than ever before. Family holidays that might once have seemed impossible suddenly became realistic annual traditions. Holiday Inn quietly supported this transformation by providing dependable accommodation wherever those new roads happened to lead. Perhaps the most remarkable difference of all was that guests rarely thought of themselves as customers in the modern sense. They were travelers, holidaymakers, families, newlyweds, grandparents, sales representatives, and adventurers. The hotel existed to welcome them, provide comfort, and help them continue their journey the following morning. There were no algorithms tracking every preference, no personalized advertising waiting after checkout, and no emails requesting detailed satisfaction surveys. Once the key was returned and the family drove away, the experience simply became another cherished memory. Looking back, a 1970s Holiday Inn now feels almost like a time capsule from a slower, more personal age of travel. It belonged to a world where journeys unfolded mile by mile, instead of turn by turn on a digital screen, where conversations replaced notifications, where maps covered kitchen tables before every trip, and where the sight of one glowing green sign beside the motorway could instantly reassure an entire family that comfort, safety, and a peaceful night's rest were only a few moments away. That quiet sense of reassurance, more than any particular building or piece of furniture, is what made a Holiday Inn in the 1970s so completely different from the hotels we know today.